Hey, and welcome to Reporting In. I'm your host, Malcolm Fleschner. This is the TYT membership-driven show. We're supported by members. We appreciate you. About investigative journalism. We talk to reporters working in the field, some who are part of the TYT fold, others who aren't, about the stories they're covering. We try to get the story behind the story. We don't always, but we try. And today I have a return guest I'm excited about because he's a real fan favorite. And it's Ken Klippenstein. Ken, are you there?
Sure am.
There he is. So Ken is he's a correspondent for TYT Investigates. You're also an independent, freelance journalist, and you've written for the Daily Beast, correct?
That's right.
And you're like this is like your third or fourth time on Reporting In. We just can't get enough of you. So for those viewers who are not familiar and who might be confused, Ken is not one of the Krassenstein brothers. He's a Klippenstein, they're Krassenstein, and the device I use to remember the difference is the first syllable of their last name is Crass, which means thoughtless and ignorant, and the first syllable of Ken's last name is Clip, which is the part of a firearm you put the bullets in. So you tell me which is cooler.
I'll take their Bitcoin though, I'll tell you that.
Are they deep? They heavily invested? They have a lot of Bitcoin?
Oh yeah, they've got a huge. That's apparently they're cryptocurrency millionaires.
Well,
so I'd say that's pretty cool.
I think you have more credibility with me though, and that's. But look, if you can somehow get into the will and finagle no, I'm the third triplet, and get some of the
That's what I'm going for.
We'll delete this. We'll delete this from and we'll put up a new clip where we say the third Krassenstein brother. Yeah, I'm happy to do that for you. So that's fun stuff. So. Ken, thank you for coming back on the show. As we're taping this, the first story I want to talk to you about today is it's sort of a little inside baseball with regard to journalism, but it's also a major international story which relates to the Saudi journalist named Jamal. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. Khashoggi, is that correct?
That's right.
And for those who don't know, he is a Saudi he's a Saudi journalist who used to be sort of in Dutch with the Saudi royal family, but eventually fell out with them over corruption, and I think there were abductions of some of his colleagues in the Saudi media, and he fled to the United States, and he'd written for the Washington Post he's been writing for the Washington Post, based here in the United States. He was getting married, and he was in Turkey, or he was planning to get married. He was in Turkey, and he went into the Saudi embassy in Turkey to fill out some forms and arrange for he was getting divorced from his current wife and remarried, and that was the last anyone saw of him. And we know that he went to the embassy. His girlfriend / fiance was waiting outside for him, and he just never came out, according to her. The Turkish authorities believe that the Saudi government actually killed him in the embassy, whereas the Saudis have said, no, that's not the case. We don't know where he left soon thereafter, and that was it. Others are suggesting that he maybe was abducted and removed from the embassy. Is your understanding of the story? Am I getting it right, or is there anything I'm missing there, or is that pretty much where we are right now?
That's very close to where we are. We also have reports in the Washington Post based on a leak in the U.S. intelligence community, saying that they have communications showing that this was Saudi government directed. So that's pretty much where we're at now.
So it was Saudi government directed, meaning an abduction or an assassination? We don't know.
I can't remember the article, but I think that it's believed that it was an assassination.
Okay, but either way, there's no question that, according to these, American intelligence sources, the Saudis were planning something. They lured him to the embassy for this reason, to whether to assassinate him or to kidnap him or what have you.
Right.
They're standing by their story that nothing happened, and they don't know. He came here, he did his business, he left, and that maybe he didn't really want to marry her and he fled, or who knows what. Right?
Yeah, which is sort of comical because they have these they have video now of people going into the hotel, and they're saying that these are Saudi law enforcement intelligence officials. So it seems like a bit of a coincidence that there's all these high-ranking Saudi officials involved in this thing where nothing happened and he just disappeared and no one knows what happened.
Right, and they also were photographed or videotaped at the airport and coming and going, so that there was this movement of Saudi intelligence or some other operatives and it was coordinated for some reason, and they're just saying that's coincidence, or they're probably not responding to that at all.
Right.
So, and what has the international response been to this? Because I mean, if this is true, that the Saudi government lured a reporter for the Washington Post, even if he was a Saudi citizen, to their embassy in Turkey for the purpose of assassinating him, that's serious. That is dead serious and a real threat, and pretty. I mean, it's hard to imagine that happening. But if this is the truth, then there presumably should be severe and serious consequences. Correct? I mean, so
I agree.
I'm not downplaying the importance of this, am I?
Not at all. This is rocking Washington right now. I was speaking to a very high, ranking human rights official. I won't mention their name because I don't know if I should, but personal friends with this person, government officials knew this person, very well connected individual, engaged in legitimate rights work. And it was actually just reported yesterday, I believe, in the Daily Beast, that just prior to all this happening, Khashoggi had planned to start a foundation for the purpose of advancing democratic rights within Saudi Arabia. So there's speculation that may have been why whatever happened to him.
So okay, so that's what the speculation about why the Saudi government may have acted now. That's sort of the small scale reason why they would do this now, meaning like to stop this from happening. But it's from a bigger picture perspective of why they would think they could get away with this. I think we have to look at other factors, such as Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia's recent trip to the United States, where he met with a variety of celebrities and government officials and Donald Trump and the like, and sort of this charisma tour where he a lot of photo ops and seen with these mucky mucks, big time industrialists and Oprah and the like. Then combined with you got Donald Trump, who's made it clear his antipathy towards reporters and why the media are a threat to the nation and a threat to the future of this country. And so, is there a general mood around the United States? I mean, the United States calls the shots potentially if we want to, and they wouldn't do something like this if they didn't think they could get away with it. Do you think that's a factor that Donald Trump the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia can be pretty confident that Donald Trump is going to look the other way if they do this?
I think you're exactly right. Every president has been, cozy with the Saudis, but President Trump, if you talk to anyone in government that knows about this region, or rights officials or whomever, they all say Donald Trump far and away closest to the Saudis out of anybody. His first foreign visit was to Riyadh, which is extraordinarily unusual for a president to do. Every other president either visits neighboring Mexico or Canada for their first foreign visit. And I spoke to rights officials at the time, and they said that that will be perceived within Riyadh and internationally as essentially a green light or an okay for whatever it is that they're up to. Because we should remember they're prosecuting a horrifying war in Yemen, the poorest country in the region. Threatens to starve hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. It has the biggest cholera epidemic in the world right now as a consequence of the conflict. So for him to have made his first foreign visit, I think that's very indicative of his attitude towards the country, and that has carried on since then. He authorized the biggest arms deal in U.S. history, I believe it was, to Saudi Arabia. So it is just green light after green light. And it should also be pointed out that Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS as he's often called, is understood by various intelligence agencies to be a sort of reckless figure. For example, shortly after Trump's election, German intelligence, their equivalent to the CIA, released an internal assessment calling him, quote, headstrong and reckless, if I remember the words, and saying that kind of cautioning everyone about how dangerous it will be if MBS ascends to the leadership. And I think German intelligence is exactly right about that. Unfortunately, we don't hear that kind of thing as much in the Washington press or think tank world for a variety of reasons. One of them being that they receive enormous amounts of money from Saudi Arabia, and I'm not saying Saudi runs them, but it does buy them some influence.
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, Saudi. That's one of the interesting things that came out, or at least that brought greater attention to this sort of thing, is Paul Manafort, how he was doing work lobbying on behalf of foreign governments, and that really that's commonplace. That foreign governments fund lobbying efforts here in the United States to improve their press and their treatment, and to get the press to soft pedal them, but also just to have think tanks who are sympathetic to them, and create a general overall a tone that downplays whatever malfeasance they're involved in or murder, bad behavior. And Saudi Arabia's got to be one of the top funders of that, if not the number one, because they have all this money, and it's very important to them that the United States give them soft treatment. So, and what you're saying about Yemen, is it that unreasonable for the Saudi government to determine that, hey, the United States is giving us all this military aid. The United States is not only looking the other way over our destruction of Yemen and the tens of thousands of people who've been killed, but also really assisting with targeting and refueling and all that sort of thing. So there's tens of thousands of Yemenis that they're responsible for killing. What is one reporter? Why should one reporter matter? And especially when Donald Trump is talking the way that he does about the media, and combine that with the fact that we look the other way when Saudi Arabia executes people for being gay, or that there's a young woman, a 29-year-old woman whose name escapes me, but she's an activist who was arrested and is scheduled to be beheaded for objecting to what the Saudi government does and being a dissident, being an activist. So there's all sorts of bad behavior, I mean, to put it mildly, that the Saudi government is involved in, and that the United States either supports or doesn't, never questions them about. Whereas if for example Iran did one half of this sort of thing, that or Venezuela or Nicaragua, we wouldn't tolerate it. So I guess what I'm wondering though is if this is different, because this is a guy who wrote for the Washington Post. It's one thing to give money to a think tank and for us to look the other way for the deaths of a bunch of people in Yemen we don't know and don't care about and who are poor already, and to hell with them. I'm not saying, I'm speaking,
No, I understand.
Not me personally, but this is a colleague. This is someone who's at least part of their circle, and it suggests, oh my God, if Donald Trump is not going to care about this Saudi journalist being murdered, is it possible that, or is it, it's too late. When they came for the Yemenis, I didn't say anything because I wasn't Yemeni, and when they came, et cetera, et cetera. You're a journalist. You move in those circles. You talk to these people. I'm not saying that you're at the cocktail parties in the Washington D.C. circuit, but is there a little bit of the fear of God in people about this, that the Trump administration would tolerate it?
Yeah, I would say that's exactly why this is being taken so seriously. I'm not saying this to minimize, the seriousness of what may have happened to Khashoggi or my, sympathies for him, but he's a very wealthy, very well-connected individual, and so I think this is, a sort of wake-up call to many folks in Washington that your associates and friends may not even be safe at this point. To say nothing of, as you mentioned, poor people in the region. So I think you're exactly right that I assume that played a major role, and this is exactly what we've seen MBS do since he sort of consolidated power. He immediately was arresting billionaires, allegedly keeping them in house arrest at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Riyadh, if I remember correctly. And these are things that as roughshod as the Saudi regime has ran over the last few decades. This is even going beyond what his predecessors have done. So I think you're right.
And to be clear, like since September of last year, I read that more than 15 journalists and bloggers have been arrested in Saudi Arabia. So it's not like it's any it should come as a shock to anybody that they are not exactly supportive of a free and open press. So what has the Trump administration's response been? At least what is their actual response? What do we think they're actually going to do, and what have they said publicly?
They have. You recall there was a bombing of a school bus. I think this case is pretty indicative of how the administration has handled things. There was a bombing of a school bus in Yemen, killed, scores of young children, as young, I think, as like 5 or 6 years old. Absolutely horrifying. They had photos of the backpack strewn about with blood spattered all over them. I remember looking into that case because James Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, had said, someone asked, is there any limit? One of the reporters in the press room asked, is there any limit to what we'll support them doing? He's like, oh, of course there are limits. Like, we care deeply about this and we're really going to bring it up and all this great stuff. Well, I found a contract showing that they were going to train a bunch of Saudi pilots literally the same week as Mattis was saying that. So that's pretty indicative of their posture on all this. Maybe
they make a point. I mean, I think Trump was quoted as saying he wanted to get to the bottom of the case and adding, we cannot let this happen to reporters, to anybody. But it seems to me from this case that you mentioned about the bombing in Yemen, and from just very recent news that when the Trump administration says they want to get to the bottom of something, ask Christine Blasey Ford about how in-depth an investigation from the Trump administration is running goes. Oh wait, she wouldn't know because she wasn't interviewed. I mean, this is like, we're going to get to the bottom of this. We're not going to talk to anybody in Saudi Arabia. We're not going to talk to anybody in Turkey. We're not going to talk to anybody affiliated with Jamal Khashoggi. But we're going to get to the bottom of it. So you're saying it's just lip service? Yeah,
I totally agree. And there's a general coziness between the regime and anyone powerful in the country. I mean, so, everyone's saying, oh, this is an attack on the press, which it is, in the Washington Post. Well, there's photos of Jeff Bezos, the, owner of the Washington Post at this point, with MBS. So this creates there's a lot of contradictions, and people are, standing up and being more critical, but one should not discount, the extraordinary power of associations that MBS continues to have, even amid this sort of heightened scrutiny.
Yeah. So, well, what about people like Jeff Bezos? I mean, these are powerful. This is an extraordinarily powerful person. This is his reporter, and it's not just him. I mean, I made a list of the people that just some of the people that Mohammed bin Salman met with when he was here on his little tour. I don't remember what there was some sort of term for it, but for his glad handing they did across the country. Right. But he met with The Rock, with Oprah, with Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Tim Cook, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos. He met, and that's just some of them, or other Michael Bloomberg. I mean, he was glad handing with all sorts of the elites, and it's not like there was any question at that time about who he was and what he stood for. So, and I think there was some pushback at the time for all these people that they are doing these photo ops and Prince, that it was disgusting and and appalling that these people. I can understand people in government. Donald Trump, he's the president, but these private citizens who presumably a lot of them have some interest in Saudi Arabia, that they're doing this and they're giving their approval, their imprimatur to this guy who is a butcher. It was disgusting, and I wonder if there's going to be any pushback against them now, and potentially efforts to use their influence and question them and say, this is your guy. He's killing reporters, assassinating reporters in cold blood. What are you going to do about it? Is there likely that will happen at all, you think?
It depends on who you're talking about when you say pushback. I think there will be pushback from more corners than there have been. I'll give you an example. I was speaking to an aide of a senator who said that the senator's done with the Saudis. We're going to start campaigning for, just ending the relationship entirely. And I was astonished. I said, you can't mean that. Not that I don't think that we should, but that's extremely unusual talk to hear from someone in Washington. And they said, yeah, they're out of control. We need to show them that we're not going to tolerate it anymore. That's the only way. And to hear a U.S. senator's office speak like that, it's just, I've never heard. It's not that I've never heard that. I've never heard anything remotely like that. So corners of the U.S. government are getting extremely fed up. The question if that will be enough, because he still has just unimaginable power through his associations, because of the oil, because of just look at Elon Musk. He's looking for funding to bail him out of the trouble that he's in with his company, and he allegedly almost came to a deal where the Saudis would essentially bail him out, so that it's not just that they have oil; they also have extremely liquid cash that comes with that, because you barely have to process the oil or anything. So that can be very, enticing to people to sort of look the other way at these, as you say, horrifying and stomach turning policies. I mean, they're still they crucify people, they behead people for things like witchcraft and sorcery. It's totally outrageous, but there is becoming more criticism, not just here but across the pond too. You have Jeremy Corbyn saying things about cutting off support to them, which is also unprecedented in its way. So there is a change. It is improving, but the question is if it will be enough, and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine if the Iranians had lured an American journalist to their embassy in Turkey.
It'd be like a war or something.
Yeah, I mean, we would already have. I mean, and yet the Saudi Arabia. I mean, I think the prince's calculation, to the extent that he is, you said he's reckless, is that he can get away with this, and he may be wrong, but he, as Billy Joel said, he may be right. But it's disgusting, and it's sad that we're depending on people like Donald Trump, who really, obviously, he doesn't care, and it's the whole apparatus that is built up around him and our political and economic system is built not to care about this sort of thing.
Right.
And it's up to us to raise a stink about it and to let other people in the media know, listen, you're a target too. This is not a one-off, and if he gets away with this, that'll be the end of it. So I encourage people to continue talking about it and continue to make a stink about it. And I mean, obviously we all hope that it's not true, that he's still alive, that he was kidnapped, that he'll be released, and so on and so forth. But that's looking less and less likely every day. So anyway, Ken, there's so much I want to talk to you about today, but we're out of time. I appreciate your sharing your insights on this topic with me, and I hope it hasn't soured you or either of your triplet brothers from coming on a future installment of Reporting In. But thanks a lot for talking to me today.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me back.
And people. So where can people check you out? They can follow you on Twitter. I highly recommend your Twitter feed. I think you're the king of the side-by-side, image juxtaposition on Twitter. Very strong side-by-side picture juxtaposition game on Ken's Twitter feed. So definitely check him out there. And you've also write for TYT Investigates. You can see that on the TYT website. The Daily Beast. Where else? Anywhere else?
I would just say Twitter. That's my thing. Say hello. I love meeting people. So.
Definitely, he's definitely worth a follow and the occasional interaction. Don't go overboard. He's a very busy man. But thanks a lot. So thanks, Ken, for being on Reporting In. Thank you at home for watching. I appreciate that you take the time to listen and watch what we talk about, to the journalists we speak with, and keep tuning in. And thank you for being members of TYT if you are, and if you're not, you totally should be, because you get more good stuff like this before everybody else. So thanks for watching Reporting In, and I hope I'll see you next time.